Welcome back again to Last Week I Watched. My name is Mark and I watch movies and TV shows and review them for you to help you decide whether or not they're worth your time. So last week I watched Don't Listen, The Sinner, Intrusion, Rattlesnake, The Possession of Hannah Grace and The Block Island Sound. So let's talk about them. First up is Don't Listen. It's a film from 2020. It stars Rodolfo Sancho, Ana Fernandez and Raymond Barria. It's showing on Netflix. So this is about Daniel, Sarah and their young son Eric. They move into a massive house with the intent to renovate it and sell it on. Eric is the first to notice that there are odd voices around the house, coming through devices and things like that. But when tragedy strikes and he drowns in the pool, Daniel begins to notice the voices and enlists the help of a paranormal researcher, German, and his daughter Ruth to get to the bottom of the strange events in the house. So this is a Spanish film. It's otherwise known as Voces, Voices, and as such you will need to engage the subtitles for this one. It's a fairly standard haunted house movie, but it's very atmospheric and well acted. I expected the film to follow Eric, but it's quite shocking when he's abruptly dispatched, and the film pivots to following Daniel. Supernatural happenings start terrorising the family in the home. There's often a dark figure way back in the background lurking. It very effectively creates tension, and when the kills happen, they're shocking and unexpected. I enjoyed the mystery as they start to unravel the background of the house. That 300 years earlier it had been used by the Spanish Inquisition in the trial and execution of witches. It's interesting sometimes how some of these old places can have quite dark histories that you're perhaps not aware of. And there's also quite a good sequence where they start to uncover the secret spaces in the home that they didn't know about. When it appears that the spirit of the witch is maliciously targeting the family, I did wonder why the entity would target the females rather than just solely taking its anger out on the males. Apparently feminine solidarity isn't a thing when you're angry and dead. The ending also has a shocking twist. It's unexpected, although in hindsight by the end of the film the signs were there in plain sight the whole time. Overall, it's a pretty entertaining film. The atmosphere builds tension and deploys some scary effects and entertaining kills, although it's never over the top. And it doesn't overstay its welcome, moving reasonably quickly throughout its runtime. Although it's fairly similar to other haunted house tales out there, it's got a few different elements which it works well. I recommend you check it out. Next up is The Sinner. It started in 2017. It's a series. It stars Bill Pullman, Jessica Biel and Carrie Coon, and it's showing on Netflix. So this series follows Detective Harry Ambrose, played by Bill Pullman, on a number of different investigations over the 4 seasons, while dealing with his own issues of loss. It's a police procedural. It's based on a 1999 book by Petra Hammerfall, which forms the first season. Originally it was intended only as a single season, but it did so well that USA Network turned it into an anthology series. Bill Pullman is the main cast member to return for all 4 seasons, and there's a variety of different actors featuring in the different stories across the different seasons. In the first season he delves into the past of Cora Tonetti. She's a troubled woman and he's trying to determine why she stabbed a man to death. In the second season Harry returns to his hometown after young boy Julian Walker confesses to poisoning a couple and learns secrets that the inhabitants are desperate to keep hidden. Season 3 sees Harry investigating a fatal car crash in upstate New York and uncovers a much larger and more disturbing case behind it. And in the 4th and final season, which is the one I watched recently, Harry is now retired and he investigates the death of a young woman in Maine. As she's from a prominent family, he is recruited to assist in the investigation. He's an interesting character. He's obviously quite competent at his job, but also flawed, dealing with depression, PTSD and an abusive childhood. He also flirts with S&M and a dominatrix, perhaps literally feeling his pain. He's quite a complicated character, and the different stories are no less complicated, with rich characters doing bad things for complicated reasons. It's often quite a challenge to keep up with it and to try and put it all together, but it makes sense in the end. Part of the fun of the show is trying to solve the mystery yourself, and yes, they are very complicated puzzles sometimes with very moving parts. If you're interested in police mystery shows, this is definitely worth checking out. It's more of a drama than an action show though, but that's not a bad thing. The show takes the time to get you invested in the characters and trying to solve the mystery as more information becomes available. Definitely worth a look, check it out. Okay, next up is Intrusion. It's from 2021. It stars Frida Pinto, Logan Marshall Green and Robert John Burke, and it's showing on Netflix. So Intrusion is a psychological thriller about cancer survivor Mira, played by Frida Pinto, and her husband, architect Henry Pearsons, played by Logan Marshall Green. And they've recently moved into a new ultra-modern home that Henry has designed in an isolated community in Corrales, New Mexico. When they experience a home invasion, they must fight for their lives against the intruders. Henry manages to overcome the intruders, shooting and killing them. And when the police show mugshots of the intruders, members of the Cobb family, who coincidentally are missing their daughter, the trio of intruders are suspected in having something to do with the missing girl. One night, Mira, noticing that Henry has left his wallet behind, follows him, intending to give it to him, but notices him going in the opposite direction. She starts to notice other suspicious behaviour from Henry, including lying to her. When she stumbles on some items linking Henry to the Cobb, she starts to realise that there may have been more to the home invasion than appeared. I thought it was quite an enjoyable thriller, and I like the way the story turns on its head partway through from a home invasion to more of a search and rescue. The actors do a good job with it, and Henry in particular becomes more unhinged once his mask starts to slip. It's sort of a Shades of Dexter thing going on there, and I expect Mira will have massive trust issues in the end of the film. I was surprised to see that reviewers have been really harsh on it, complaining that it was derivative of other home invasion thrillers. Look, I get that sometimes you get a slew of similar films, but I think you can pull off a similar film as long as you bring something original to it, and I felt like it did. I thought the twist was a bit clever, and admittedly I hadn't seen the other similar films that had been cited, so I'll make an effort to check some of those out and get back to you on that. But I had a good time with it, so I recommend it to you. I think it's worth a watch. Okay, next up was Rattlesnake. It's from 2019, starring Carmen Ejogo, Theo Rossi and Emma Greenwald. It's showing on Netflix. So while stranded in the middle of the desert, Katrina, played by Carmen Ejogo's daughter Clara, is bitten by a rattlesnake. Katrina meets a mysterious woman who she says can help, and I don't know what she does, but somehow afterwards the bite appears to have vanished. But Katrina is then told she needs to pay for Clara's recovery, otherwise it'll all come back again. As Clara's soul has been spared, she's told, Katrina must give them another by sunset, and it must be human. Katrina then searches the small town for someone she can sacrifice for her daughter. She finds a man who's abusive to his girlfriend and abducts him to take him into the desert to fulfill the bargain. It's an interesting premise, but there is no sense of urgency in the film despite the time pressure. It's very slow moving and largely directionless, and it fails to build any kind of effective tension. It's just not that interesting to watch really, and she spends most of her time agonising morally about what she has to do. It only ever really picks up briefly when the supernatural pressures try to give her a hurry along. She comes across as crazy to people around her, but even that thread doesn't turn into anything. It just feels like they had this idea and then they didn't bother to sort of, do anything with it, and that's a real shame. There's lots of avenues for, I guess, advancement in the story, and they don't ever seem to really get picked up. Clearly there's something at work in this town, and there appears to have been quite a few people that have been sacrificed. There's not even any attempt to explore the supernatural side of it. Is it some kind of deal with the devil? What is it? Who knows? So unfortunately the film is slow and boring for most of its runtime. It never really takes control of the situation at all, and even the sacrifice of Billy happens more accidentally than by her actions, and somehow she gets given a free pass. Good enough, I guess. I can't recommend this. It's a shame, but it's just not worth the investment of your time in watching it. It's forgettable, and it's a shame. It had a decent cast, but it's really just too many missed opportunities here, and it's just too directionless largely. I wouldn't bother watching it. Okay, next up is The Possession of Hannah Grace. It's from 2018, starring Shane Mitchell, Gray Damon and Stana Katic. It's showing on Netflix. So during an exorcism ritual that goes horribly wrong, possessed Hannah Grace kills the priest and is then smothered by her father Granger. 3 months later, Megan Reed, played by Shay Mitchell, she's an ex-cop struggling with depression and addiction to pills after her partner is killed, takes a job working the late shift at the morgue when a body of a young female is brought in, stabbed to death and partially burned. Strange things begin occurring in the morgue, and Megan starts to become suspicious of the corpse. Hannah's father Granger tries to force his way into the morgue, warning Megan that Hannah isn't really dead and that she must burn the corpse, but Megan has him arrested. As the corpse starts to heal itself by killing other staff around the morgue, Megan finds herself in a fight for survival against the possessed Hannah. I actually really enjoyed this movie. It's paced well, it creates tension, and the morgue setting is especially oppressive. The brutalist architecture that they use creates a real sense of hostility and confinement. The lights turn off regularly, plunging parts of the facility into darkness. Everything is locked down by security, and she's trapped in there and at night, often by herself, and cannot leave. Not only does Megan have to contend with Hannah, but the environment is also quite hostile towards her and working against her often. The atmosphere is really, really good. The corpse effects are also really well done, and Hannah is quite scary. Despite it being a relatively cheap horror film, the effects look great and the production doesn't look cheap. The story also has a subplot dealing with Megan's struggle with depression after the shooting, which is also cause for concern as Hannah was deep in depression and the demon used this as a vector to enter her. So Megan's struggling as Hannah is also against the demon, which could potentially jump into her, but she's working hard to overcome it and get her life back on track. I was quite surprised that the reviews were so bad for the film and the critic scores were super low. I'd say it was actually better than some of the other films I've seen. I had a good time with it and I'd recommend giving it a go. You might be surprised. Okay, finally is The Block Island Sound. It's from 2020, starring Chris Sheffield, Neville Archambault and Michaela McManus. It's showing on Netflix. So something strange is lurking off the coast of Block Island. It's silently influencing the behaviour of the fisherman, Tom Lynch, and after suffering a series of violent outbursts, he unknowingly puts his family in danger. I saw the description for this and was expecting some kind of horror monster piece about something killing animals on an island or at sea, perhaps something like Dagon or a Cthulhu tale from the deep, but turns out it's a slow-building psychological drama where you're questioning whether Harry, played by Chris Sheffield, has gone insane, somehow gotten dementia or something else after the death of his father Tom, played by Neville Archambault. There are hints that there are other forces at work, indicated by electronic equipment going haywire when he starts to receive messages or blacks out and behaves strangely. His sister Audrey, played by Michaela McManus, tries to understand what's going on and help him, and unwittingly becomes caught up in something menacing. She's actually under the impression that maybe he's got a drug or an alcohol problem or something like that. And maybe he does, in conjunction to with other things that are going on. So spoilers, if you want to watch the film, pause now. He's actually being abducted by aliens. And the film is similar to Fire in the Sky, although the aliens are never physically seen, nor does there seem to be the budget for a bright light or a spaceship. Items, animals and people just seem to fly up into the air and float away. Later, when they're done studying with them, they're just thrown back, hopefully to fall into the sea and survive, or sometimes to fatally impact on the ground. Honestly, these alien beings that's studying us behave like a bunch of small children, the way they snatch up some fish to play with and then just throw them back when they're done. The film explains this at the end, perhaps unnecessarily, that it's like us taking things to look at and studying it and then throwing it back when they're done. But perhaps they're studying us to help us. I'm not really sure where they get that idea from, whether they're just assuming good intent because we have largely good intent when studying something, or they're just taking it on faith. I'm not sure that the outcomes from their studies could really be inferred to be that positive for the people, considering the masses of dead animals and that the people that they abduct seem to either die or go insane afterwards. At any rate, it's an interesting character piece. It's well acted. There's some nice atmospheric shots showing island life, some interesting ideas. It does ratchet up the tension, as you're not quite sure what's going on initially, and later you're not sure when they'll interfere with Harry or force him to bring someone else along for show and tell. It's worth a look. I recommend checking it out. Okay, so those are my suggestions for this week. I hope they're of interest to you. As always, feel free to leave any comments below, leave any suggestions as well. If you've got any thoughts about the movies or other movies that you recommend, feel free to let me know. On screen is my Twitter link. You'll be able to tweet at me. I tweet on there while I'm watching things, so if you want to come and tweet along with me, feel free. And please do click on the like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and it'll help me to send you the next set of reviews when they come out next week. Okay, so I hope you're all well. As always, stay safe out there, enjoy some films and TV, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching now. Bye.